Jamestown, during the 1830s, a game was played with a wooden bat and a ball in which runners were called out only when pegged. Children played it in the hills outside of town and in an empty lot near the local tannery. The game evolved into baseball, and Jamestown children started playing it on a swampland called the Flats. The swampland was often covered by rowboats and rafts, but when the water level dropped, the land served as an early ball field. By the late 1850s, the rules of the game were still only roughly defined, and the ball they used was rock hard, making it common for teams to score 60 or 70 runs. Jamestown was little more than a village in the mid-1800s, and Celeron was a tiny hamlet still 30 years short of having an amusement park. Boats filled the stream along the 5-mile stretch between Chautauqua Lake and Jamestown. One could look south along the stream from a rickety wooden bridge to see boats carrying logs and lumber on their way over the border to Warren, and then on to Pittsburgh. The hills to the west were full of fine furniture shops for which Jamestown was already renowned. On July 4th, 1861, thin and athletic Jamestowner Clint Windsor turned 14 years old. The Civil War had begun, and boys a few years older than him had already left town to join the battle. While they fought, Windsor sat in the classroom of a one-room schoolhouse near the center of the village. The war continued, and Windsor attended high school at Jamestown Union School and Collegiate Institute, where he excelled in sports, particularly gymnastics, which led him to compete against schools in neighboring towns. He and his teammates were a big hit at the New York State Teachers Association at Owego in 1868 with their demonstration in free dumbbell and wand gymnastics. In 1866, 19-year-old Windsor organized the Unknowns, a Jamestown ball club that played the Alleghenies of Warren, the City Club of Erie, the Forest City Club of Cleveland, and other clubs in vacant lots and railroad yards. Though there were no leagues yet, small crowds of curious Jamestowners gathered whenever games were played to see the early incarnations of baseball.
Thrill. It's kind of a strange experience to come here, and really a thrilling experience, a unique one for a writer, to be sitting at lunch with a lot of the characters of one's book. I don't know of any writers who really have that opportunity. I mean, if Shakespeare had a chance to sit around with his characters, this is kind of well, certainly no Shakespeare, but you are some interesting characters. What are you laughing at? I didn't prepare anything. I don't know what you guys would like to hear from me, but I can say individually, you probably all know, you certainly know your own histories better than I know any one of your experiences. But the thing I brought to the table, I guess, is kind of a critical distance. I could look at this history, with a bird's eye view, and try to put it together into something that was readable, hopefully fun to read. And what I came out of it with was this remarkable story that you all created. I guess mostly unwittingly, but with your ball play and your commitment to the team, and commitment to professional baseball in Jamestown, which is just, every time I go back over my old drafts, and working right now really on those last 2 paragraphs of the book, which I hope is going to kind of be a key that sort of unlocks the whole book, and to put everything into focus, maybe on a camera where you just focus everything, is this this commitment that was here since really from 1941 on to professional baseball, and it kind of give me the chills when I'm going over these stories, because none of it would have been possible. We wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't have just finished my first book at 23 years old, and there wouldn't be this excitement over professional baseball had there not been that deeper commitment. I mean, the excitement and the fans at the ballpark and the cheering and the rah-rah and all that stuff is all gravy when you look at the deeper commitment that most recently Russ Dietrich and all of you to some extent have shown in trying to keep this team in town. And it's remarkable when you compare it to other towns and other small cities, that other major cities that can't keep a team. The commitment just isn't there. It was a fascinating story. Kind of one of the many subplots of the book is to see the fate of Niagara Falls over the past 50 years. I don't know how many of you remember or know. In 1940, the team, the Niagara Falls Club, was lured here into Allen Park and played their 1940 season in Jamestown, and that was really the beginning of the kind of, 1941 was the first, was when College Stadium was built, when Municipal Stadium was built. And that team came here in 1940 because the support wasn't there in Niagara Falls. And the support was here in 1941 with Ernest Kessler and Judge Barger, who obviously I only know by name, but these are my characters. And the commitment that they showed wasn't in Niagara Falls. It wasn't in, and not to belabor one city, but it's a good parallel to see what Niagara Falls couldn't summon the energy that it takes to keep a team in town, because it's not an easy business to run, as a lot of you sitting here know very well. It's a tough one, and you have to be very committed to doing it. In a lot of ways, it's like writing. You don't expect to get rich on it, but the rewards are worth it when you do it right, and you give your whole self to it. And then again in 1993, when Niagara Falls lost their team again to Jamestown, and it's a neat parallel that this town has had that commitment. Albeit, every once in a while there were a couple of breaks, or a couple of spots where there just wasn't the money to do it, or there was a little lull for whatever reasons, historical reasons. Just couldn't keep it in town. But still, when you look at the broad picture over the past 50, 55 years, that commitment's been here, and it's just not in a lot of towns. It's not in the town I was born in. It's not in Hillsdale, New Jersey, and it's not in thousands of other towns around the country, but it's here in Jamestown. It's something special that you have, and I've gotten to appreciate vicariously. But never I'll never have the appreciation that you have. I'll never be able to, as much as I can be invested in this, and it was 3 years of my life that I've devoted to writing this book and to do it right. But still, you have that unique experience. You have that experience that you lived it, and you were here throughout it. And hopefully I can enhance that experience by putting some perspective on it. And I guess that was the goal from the beginning, was to put some perspective on it, and to see that this is a truly remarkable story that came out of the 50 years.
David, the title of your book is tentatively what?
Across the Seams.
And the theory behind it is that there were some seams that were woven.
It works in a couple of different ways, I think. I mean, in one way, the seam that stitches together the ball that is Jamestown baseball was that commitment, was the dedication to professional baseball in Jamestown. And in some ways, those are the red stitches that go throughout the ball. I guess that's probably the root of the metaphor, and it works in a lot. I guess it works in a lot of different ways, because also the way a baseball is constructed. I mean, there's the seams are interwoven, and there's the way the yarn is wound. That's what the story is. I mean, there's this. It's overused, but this web of baseball. There's something about baseball, not to mention something about a small city, that lends itself to stories. Lends itself to stories which have characters that come in and out and reappear in different places. You look at someone like Mr. Parkhurst, who came in as a ball player, came back as a ball player, back as an umpire, then back as a fan. I mean, that is a tremendous story. And I know when you're here and you're seeing, the same faces all the time at the ballpark, you don't necessarily see the forest for the trees. But that's my job. I'm here to see the forest for the trees. That is a remarkable story, and there's dozens like that in the book, and I hope you enjoy reading it. But those are the stories that I think really made it. I mean, the story it's clearly about people. Johnny Newman hit 30 home runs in 1942. That's interesting because it's in the context of the story. The fact that he hit 30 home runs itself is not, it doesn't mean anything to someone, it doesn't really even mean anything to someone that was here, unless it's in the context of the larger story. And that's what putting this together can hopefully do, is put it in its context and see why that is so tremendous. I mean, if John Newman came here, slugged 30 home runs, left, and never returned, and never to be heard from again, he'd be a footnote. Instead, he's a main character, because he stayed, and because he meant so much to the town, and you know, as a ball player and as a citizen. So it's those kind of stories that I think brought about the title, you know, Across the Seams, because across the seams of time, there is a lot of interweaving of characters and places and events that make for you know, at times an emotional story, because these are lives of people who really invested themselves in baseball, and in particular in Jamestown.
These are the secrets of champions.
The one thing catchers have to understand is that's why we're over here talking about right now about how important it is to come in between innings and sit down next to your pitcher. Because when you come in, if you strike out and you're in there throwing your bat, your helmet, nobody wants to hear that. And when you do that, everybody knows that you're caring more about your at-bats than your pitching staff. And another thing too is you can never take, like you said, you can never take your at-bats out to the field because there's always eyes on you. And if you're out there and you mope out the home plate, everybody knows. If you're taking too much time in between pitches, getting out there, or you got out there and you're taking it because you're mad about your at-bat, everybody knows, and it affects the whole team. So if you're not swinging a bat, nobody cares. I mean, not in a bad way, you know what I mean? I mean, your job is you strike out, oh well. Sit down, put your shin guards on next to that pitcher. go over, hey, we got 3, 4, and 5 coming up this inning. Let's get this guy doing this. So when you're out there, you're on the same page. You got the flow going. You got one out, letting everybody know right away. Everybody feeds off us. Okay, yes, the shortstop and center fielder are our leaders too, but we're the ultimate. We're the other coach on the team. Everybody feeds on us. If we're dragging back there, you're gonna look up. I promise you, your whole team's gonna be dragging. So we need to go out there, and these guys gotta understand, if you don't hit, get out there and know your number one job is to get that pitching staff and win that ball game.
That's a good point. I mean, you as a catcher have to realize that you're the manager out on the field. So you're kind of running the game, you're calling the game. You're in between innings. Not only are you talking to your pitcher, but you're talking to the manager. You're talking to the pitching coach. So you have to realize that. And then obviously if you hit, it's good for the team and you feel good about it, that you contribute offensively or whatever. But the most important thing you got to realize is, you know, that you got to run a game, that you got to, you know, run that game and you know, keep in contact not only with the pitcher, but your manager and your pitching coach. They're going to be asking, you know, how's he doing? Has he got anything left? If he's struggling, they're going to ask you what you think, and you have to, you know, be honest and be in the game.
That's probably exactly why there's so many ex-catchers that become managers, as you know, some of you guys have already done.
That's a great point what you just said right there too, because if a pitcher is starting to lose it out there, the catcher's the one that knows it first and sees it. And who's the manager and pitching coach going to ask? The catcher. You know what I mean?
It's very important that you realize that you know you're kind of going to be the main guy, whether that pitcher is going to stay out there or not. And you have to be honest about it, and you got to build that trust with the manager. So, you know, you definitely have to take that, I think, more important sometimes than your offense.
You know what's very important too is we have to, not only do we have to know everything about our pitching staff, scouting reports and everything, we have to know every sign that's given, even on bump plates. That's very important because we know right now our play one, should I be saying this on the air like this? Our play one is the only time someone's going to be at second base. So we have to watch the third baseman give signs. So we know if it's play one and that ball's bunted hard, we're going two. So one thing you don't want to see is play three's on and the ball hit bunted hard and he's calling 2-2-2 and no one's there. So play one is the only time if someone's covering second base. The catcher needs to know that. The catcher needs to be watching that sign, watching everything that's going on, so he knows exactly where and who's going to be where.